power of one. Today, I am so excited to be speaking with two wonderful, wonderful doctors. And it is right up my alley on how we further and how we continue to help those affected by crime. Welcome to the show, Dr. Erik and Dr. Michelle.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Dr. Erik, we'll begin with you. Please tell the viewers about a little bit about your medical background.
Sure. Thanks, Melany. And thank you again for having us today. It's great to have the opportunity to share about our program. I am a pediatrician and an educator. For the last 25 years, I've been taking care of patients mostly in academic healthcare settings, surveying patients mostly of patients with high poverty rates, high stress. And I was able to take care of patients in Brooklyn, New York, and now in West Philadelphia. Uh, Specifically, I work at the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine, PCOM or PCOM, and I care for patients in one of our three urban healthcare centers. I'm particularly located at the Lancaster Avenue location, which is on 42nd Street and Lancaster. We have a pretty large population that's been affected by gun violence there. And my patients in particular may have lost family members due to gun violence. So we're really trying to look for ways to help support the families impacted by gun violence. So
Thank
that's
you
just
so
a
much.
brief introduction. Thank you.
Okay, well, we'll dive more into it. Dr. Michelle?
Thanks, Melanie. I'm Michelle Lent. I'm a clinical psychologist and a professor at the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine, PCOM. And I specialize in the cognitive behavioral treatment of adults, really with conditions that sort of fall at the intersection of medical and behavioral. And I have been acting as a co-project director on our gun violence project since March.
Okay. And Dr. Erik, you spoke about West Philly. Do you serve all of Philadelphia or just the West Philly area?
Well, the healthcare centers, we have three locations. We have one in North Philadelphia, like Cambria, Lehigh, 22nd Street. We have another location on our main campus, which is on City Avenue, kind of by the Schuylkill River. And then we have the West Philadelphia campus in Lancaster. And we do take care of patients from all over Philadelphia, but generally our urban centers are really drawing from communities around those healthcare areas, those healthcare centers.
It kind of sounds like Northwest Victim Services. We're stationed in the Northwest section of Philly,
Yep.
but say a crime happens in the Northwest section of Philly, they could live in West Philadelphia, or the crime could have occurred in West Philadelphia, but they live in the Northwest section of Philadelphia, then we still serve them. I was very impressed when I looked on the website. Explain PCOM's holistic approach to addressing the gun violence program that you have.
Yeah, this is kind of where it all started for us. About, I would say, 3 years ago, there were a number of students, faculty, and physicians who were really concerned about the rising numbers of gun violence across the US, but particularly our communities. So they created this special interest group called the Holistic Approach to Addressing Gun Violence. And it really is a special interest group. It's students, it's faculty, it's staff who want to learn more about gun violence, but also figure out, are there opportunities for PCOM to help address the epidemic? And what's really interesting about the model is that it is holistic, but it's also something that you can pick and choose what efforts you want to work on. So let me explain. So the idea is that there are four areas within this holistic approach. There's community outreach, advocacy, healthcare delivery, and research. And community outreach, is what it sounds like. It's reaching out to patients and communities to see if there's something we can do to help. We had one example recently where we sponsored the Souls Shot Portrait Project exhibit this summer. So we welcomed community members into our campus, and we also provided that viewing for the patients who were in the healthcare centers. And so they can see the portraits of of people who lost their lives to gun violence. It's a beautiful way and a meaningful way to celebrate the lives of those lost to gun violence in a way that is more than just marking them off as a number. These are
Mhm.
people. And so showing that exhibit was a way for us to kind of engage the community, just our internal community, but also the surrounding community. And then the second is advocacy. So raising awareness about gun violence education and practices. Healthcare delivery, we really wanted to identify ways where we can identify and support patients in need of mental health support services. Finding some mental health support services is very, very hard, particularly for our low income communities where they may have Medicaid or not have insurance at all. So our goal is to try to find ways to identify and improve referral practices, improve access to mental health services. So that's another area that we've focused on. And then the fourth area of that sort of holistic model is research. Um, so we believe that this sort of comprehensive model of those four pillars allows us to approach gun violence in a pretty holistic way, but it also allows people to say, I'll I'll take this little piece and bite size, and I can do a community fair to help in this community outreach quadrant of that holistic piece. So it allows for more engagement by doing this. So kind of a long answer to your short question. I hope that was helpful.
No, it's great. And you touched on something else. Dr. Erik, I often see, because I serve victims bedside at Temple and at Einstein, and you were speaking about poverty. We in the Northwest section of Philly, we deal with a lot of victims who are shooting victims, domestic violence victims, all types of victims who are living in poverty. And once they're victimized, it just turns their life upside down. So if they thought they were behind in their bills now, it's even deeper. You know what I experienced and have been experiencing, which was so heartbreaking. You have victims who have been shot and they go home and then they have to go back to that hospital to get their prescription. The prescription could cost as little as $20 or $30.
Yeah.
They don't have it. Does your program help with something like that?
Not directly, but one of the goals of the program is to educate our healthcare center staff and physicians and the patients about what resources are available in Philadelphia. You know, Melany, that there are tons of groups supporting victims and survivors of gun violence, but not everybody knows how to access those systems and
Mm-hmm.
those services. So an example would be something like Traces Up the Block. They provide a great repository of resources that are available to families who have been impacted. Might be, construction to repair a door that was shot in your home. Might be to provide extra financial support for paying for medications. Might be identifying mental health support services outside of their own healthcare setting. So what we can do through our program at Shelter is to help direct families to those resources that might help them. But we don't provide direct financial support for things like you're describing with medications.
But that's fine because I always say it takes more than one agency to be able to supply the needs of victims and their families. And the agency that you spoke about, are their services free?
So they're a repository of services. So they'll identify things like the Anti-Violence Partnership of Philadelphia or
I'm
legal
familiar with
services.
AVP. Yeah, but see, you
Yeah.
spoke about the one like with the door.
Mhm.
So with filing through victims compensation, which I love the victims compensation program, but you can't do anything with property damage.
Mhm.
So you're if somebody's door is shot out, if their windows are shot out, kind of stuck. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
So to my knowledge, there are agencies that will assist. I don't know the details about all of those. And,
Okay.
with this program is relatively new to us. We've just started it up and running. So we're really being introduced to the more than 100 agencies that are all addressing gun violence in Philadelphia. There's a lot for everybody to learn. But there are services that are available for those type of things.
Sounds good. Dr. Michelle, there are many gun violence victims in need of shelter for their safety. How does PCOM help with those needs?
Yeah. Well, I'll just start with, in our case, SHELTER is actually an acronym, and it stands for Support and Healing Through Empowerment, Learning, and Trauma Education in Recovery After Gun Violence. So when we're talking about shelter in our program, it's more kind of a metaphorical sense,
I see.
where we're healthcare professionals, and we're providing a place for individuals who have been impacted by gun violence to receive emotional support, healing for their physical injuries, etc. That said, it's not uncommon, as you just mentioned, for individuals who are impacted by gun violence to require relocation services, to
Mhm.
require actual housing. And as Dr. Langenau mentioned, we're working to make sure our healthcare professionals at our 3 healthcare centers have those resources available and can provide that information to our patients who may need actual physical shelter.
Okay. So, and I know both of you can speak to this, which is so unfortunate, suicides. And there have been times where family members, mothers, fathers, siblings, I hear them saying, I don't want to live anymore because they've lost their loved one. And therapy, traditional therapy, just may not be enough. What services do you have available for those who just feel like I cannot go on any longer because my loved one is no longer here?
Yeah, Melanie, you're referring to one example of the unfortunate and potentially tragic collateral impacts of gun violence on families, on individuals, on communities. And I first want to say that anyone who's having suicidal thoughts, whether, after gun violence, whether it's an individual or somebody or your family member is having suicidal thoughts, it's essential that that individual be evaluated by a healthcare professional immediately. We want to make sure that they stay safe. So that could be at PCOM Family Medicine. And then it's really that evaluation, depending on their risk level and making sure that they're safe. That evaluation is really what's needed to determine an appropriate next step, and an appropriate treatment plan. I will say that one of the wonderful things about our shelter funding is that it allows us to provide a free behavioral health support to adults who are impacted by gun violence at our 3 healthcare centers. So again, that's City Avenue, it's West Philly and North Philly. And that, again, it's no cost, and it's a 6-session program, where individuals will kind of learn about how that traumatic event might be impacting their mood and their functioning. And then they'll be able to learn new skills to better cope with that traumatic event.
How can one access your services, or do you reach out to them? How can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, there's a couple ways. So if they're already a healthcare center patient, the information will be there for them, at any of our healthcare centers. But I think for everybody else, the best way is to email us at shelter@pcom.edu, and we'll be able to provide all the information and determine whether they're a good fit for our behavioral health program.
Okay. And both of you can speak to this. Unfortunately, this summer has been a little sad for the city of Philadelphia with these mass shootings. And when I see these shootings on the news, it's just so heartbreaking. How do you handle those who are affected by a mass shooting? And do you have the ability to be able to help like a whole community? And they were coming back to back. And a lot of them, well, they were I know it was a couple of them in South Philly, and then you had Lemon Hill. So speak to the viewers about mass shootings and how that can affect everybody. And I mean, even people who are in their house and a mass shooting may happen on the street that they live in.
Yeah, we mass shootings, it's so hard to understand the causes of mass shootings and the motivation behind it. And the tragedy is just, it's overwhelming. And this has serious impacts on everybody who, whether you live in the community, were involved in the shooting, or just listening to it constantly on the news. There's a lot of impact on mental health for sure. I think the way we handle it is that every shooting and every death, every injury, every person is going to respond differently. And our shelter program is really designed for individuals. So it's designed for a unique person who has a unique experience with that particular shooting, and it can be specialized and tailored to that person. So it's flexible and personalized. It's not really designed for group therapy at this point. This is
Mhm.
something that we may want to explore in the future. And we'll see that a lot in mass shootings. For instance, the one in Minnesota right now, there are counselors descending on the school there to provide support for families who've been impacted. And this sort of crisis management for mass shootings is not something we're able to provide, but what we can provide is individualized care and support. It's awful to really think about mass shootings, and I just want to emphasize that the program really is designed for individuals, and whether it's a mass shooting, maybe you have a loved one who passed away, maybe you're worried about your son who's carrying a handgun all the time and you're worried about his safety. Maybe you're just worried about hearing gunshots in your neighborhood or watching it on TV. The shelter program is really designed for individual support rather than group therapy. But it
Okay.
is something to explore and something we'd be interested in developing in the future.
And it is good. And let's go back, and our hearts and our prayers are with all of those family members with that mass shooting that occurred yesterday. We are praying for you. And I know it was so traumatic for, especially for those two parents, the parents who lost the two children, the 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. I can't even imagine. But our prayers are with you.
Yeah.
And
And the
and Dr.
parents, oh, I'm sorry. I
No,
was
go
going to
ahead.
say, and the parents of the children who witnessed the shooting.
Of
How
course,
do you
yeah.
support an 8-year-old who watched their friends die?
I
Oh,
know.
terrible.
It's horrible. Yeah, it's horrible. This affects so many people, and you spoke about people who are watching this on the news. So my dad is a pastor, and that was his calling. It was not mine. And I said to him yesterday, I said, Daddy, this kind of stuff shakes me to my core. They were praying, and someone shot them while they were praying. Like that affected me, because you're praying to God for protection, for him to protect your family, for him to protect you. Just unbelievable. So we all need some type of therapy. And I do think what you guys are doing is amazing, because group therapy is not for everybody. And when I speak to people and offer them therapy, they say that, I want one-on-one. They don't always want group therapy. So what you're doing is very powerful. So Dr. Michelle and Dr. Erik, speak about the long term. I often see that a lot of our victims receive that short term care or the short term advocacy. But I have a shooting victim, Jason Suber, who I take him with me when I do presentations. He was shot 16 times.
Mhm.
Jason Suber, and I was by his bedside since 2018 when I was with him when he was in Temple. He's still suffering to this day. He cannot work. He receives disability, but that disability cannot help him provide for his household, his 3 children. He has a wife. So speak to the long term. How long can someone receive your services? Is there a time limit?
Melanie, I, I agree with you. All of this is incredibly tragic and challenging to process. But we've been funded for 3 years to be able to provide these shelter services. And once an individual finishes the 6-week program, we do have behavioral health counselors available in the long term at all of our healthcare centers. So One of the goals is that if an individual requires kind of longer term therapy, that those services would also be available through PCOM.
That's awesome.
Now, I just want to say thank you to the state first for funding this program. The Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency made this all possible.
Mhm.
And then I also wanted to speak to one of the reasons that we decided to apply for this grant, which I think speaks to much of what you just said, Melanie, is that we were moved to do this because Dr. Langenau gave out a survey last year just asking individuals at our healthcare centers whether or not they were impacted by gun violence. And I believe it was 64% of them said yes.
Mhm.
And that was a huge wake-up call for us that there is an unmet need here. So
Mhm.
while it is a 6-week program and while we're working to educate our healthcare professionals that hopefully in the long term we'll be able to implement this trauma-informed care in the long term, we certainly hope that our individuals will stick with our healthcare system and be able to get support for as long as needed.
Sounds good. Dr. Erik?
Yeah, I just echo what Michelle said. And the other thing is that, we're a university that really prides itself on education. Not only educating our patients, but also educating our healthcare providers and our students who are, all going to be healthcare professionals in the future. And we've designed a program coming up, a free webinar series called Armed, Strategies to Address the Impacts of Gun Violence. It's free to anybody. It's tailored really to community leaders, to healthcare providers, to students, to whoever is an advocate of supporting or reducing gun violence in communities. So that's an example of an educational effort that we're pursuing. And the program is, we already have the six sessions already planned out for the fall and for the winter. But that's something that we expect will likely continue whether we have grant support or not. Because our job as an educational institution is to educate, and it's to educate the students, providers, and the community. So I don't imagine that those type of efforts will stop after the grant ends.
And that's awesome. And that's empowering. You're empowering those who are affected by gun violence because unfortunately we pay for our ignorance when we don't know. But that is awesome to empower them, to let them know what resources are available and how you access those resources. Because there are some people that do not know how to access resources. There are people who still don't have cell phones. So they can't pick up a cell phone and access the resources that they need. Some people don't have computers. So this is awesome. So someone will tell someone and someone will tell someone else, and that's great networking. So give the viewers your contact information again in case someone needs to reach out to you.
The best way to reach us is at shelter@pcom.edu. Just shoot us an email. Or they can check out our website at pcom.edu, and that will lead them to information on how to get in touch with us.
Well, I thank both of you for joining me today. I thank you for all of your hard work and dedication to help those affected by crime. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Again, our prayers go out to all of those affected by the mass shooting yesterday. Please know we care and we love you, and we will provide you with all the resources that you need. Peace and love.